of Helen Technology, the super app. And today I have my guest, Wendy Byford. Okay, I want to make sure I'm saying the last name. Is it Bayford or Byford?
Byford.
Byford.
Byford. Correct.
Okay, good. Because I'll say Bayford. I guess there's an A missing there. So it's Byford. Okay, perfect. Thanks
Right.
again, Wendy. Welcome to the Headliners. How are you today?
I'm fine, thanks, and I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. So maybe before we jump into discussing about how you help small business, let's go back a little bit for people to kind of get to know you. If you don't mind, introduce yourself. Like who are you? Like let's go back to like where you grew up or like some good memory when you were a kid, youth, and all that stuff.
Oh my goodness. Well, I grew up in Canada,
Canada, okay.
in in Montreal, in
Mhm.
Quebec, and I went to university in the Eastern Townships, which is the eastern part of the province.
Mhm.
And it was actually a very good time to grow up as a child
Yeah.
because it was a much simpler time. We didn't have a lot of electronics. We
Yeah.
went to the playground to play, so you learned to speak to other people,
Mhm.
right? You had to learn how to communicate. You had to learn how to solve problems by speaking to people. Um, it was actually I had a very good childhood. I had a very stable family,
Mhm.
and my parents never told me that I couldn't do something. It was very interesting. My my father worked in a flour mill. He wasn't, a big executive or anything. He worked in a flour mill,
Mhm.
and so we were, I guess, what you would call kind of blue collar family.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go to university. No one in our family had ever gone to university,
Yeah.
so this was a big dream. And my seventh grade teacher had sat us all down one day and said, especially the girls, don't think that you're going to get married and somebody is going to support you for the rest of your life and you're going to play house and all this
Yeah.
sort of stuff, because life happens. You don't know what's going to happen. So you need to get a good education. So I came marching home and I said to my father, I'm going to go to university.
Yeah.
And my father, of course, said, well, you know, that's an expensive proposition and I can't really afford to send you.
Hmm.
And so I thought about that for a long time, and I thought, if I'm going to go to university, then I'm going to have to make this happen. It's
Yeah.
not that I ever thought that my parents were bad people. It's simply, life is the way it is. And so I worked very hard and I got a scholarship and I went. Uh, the first person in our family on either side to ever go to university.
Wow.
And what I learned was
Mhm.
university was not there to teach me a skill.
Yeah.
It was there to teach me how to think. And I think that that's something that needs to be passed on to children.
Yeah.
That you don't come out of university with these wonderful skills that suddenly you can get this fantastic job. It's
Mhm.
teaching you how to think, how to reason, how to solve problems, how to get
Is
things
it,
done.
do
And
you
that's
think it's still the
more
same?
valuable.
Do you think it's still the same? The same thing the school, the university or college is still doing the same thing where they are teaching you how to think, not necessarily the skills. Is it you think it's
You
still the
know,
same? Or did they get lost
I
somewhere in
have the capability.
Mhm.
In some places it's lost, in some places I think it's flourishing. I think it really depends
Yeah.
upon to and university that you go to. When I went, which is a long time ago, and I went to Canada, I didn't go in the US. Um, our history teacher made a decision that we were going to learn practical history. We were memorize a bunch of names and dates and places. We were going to look at history from the standpoint of the people who lived it. And so I can remember very vividly one week when we were talking about revolution. And we had to sit down and plan a revolution. Like if we were in 1830s Europe and all of these things were going on and all of these people were rising up, what would we do? How would we plan a revolution against people that seemed so much better educated, so much better armed than we were, had all the political force? What would we do? And that made us stretch and think in ways that we hadn't thought of before. And it didn't make us revolutionaries by any stretch of the imagination, but it made us think outside the box. It made us look for solutions. It made us look at problems in a different way. And so when we got into university, we just continued doing that, trying to look at things from a different perspective and to look for connections in things. So because life is multifaceted, right? So if you're taking business courses in university, they say that if all you've got in your hand is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Right? So if you're in one line of study, it doesn't mean that the others don't exist. They all have to come together. And you need to look at problems from a multifaceted viewpoint. And I think that sometimes that's lost. And it's not because the universities can't do it. It's not because the colleges don't have good programs. It's because we haven't taken the time to explain to the students that this is something that they should be concerned with. This is something that is important. It's something that is the greatest gift of their education, is to teach them how to think this way.
Yeah, yeah.
So I feel very blessed for the time that I went to school, for the way that my teachers and professors approached life and how they approached problem solving, so that in later life, when things came up, I could sit back and look at things from different angles and decide, okay, maybe this is an opportunity, maybe it's not really a problem. Maybe we can solve it doing this as opposed to this.
Yeah. Do you speak French?
I did. I've been in the US now for over 25 years, and so I've pretty much lost my ability.
You lost it.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
But I used to speak French.
Yeah. I used to live in DC and somehow it was kind of easy if you spoke a certain language. It was easy to kind of attach yourself either to the embassy, so you hear stuff like, let's say if you spoke French, so you will attach yourself to some events that's going on with the French embassy. So whenever they have event, you just kind of show up and you start kind of talking, so to keep up so you don't end up losing their language. That was fun. It was so many. I got actually introduced to one of my friends I was dating. So, and she was like, "Yeah, you should talk to." I speak Swahili, so she was like, "Yeah, you should just register with the embassy. Every time they have like a Tanzanian event, you go there, you get to talk to everybody in Swahili." I was like, "Okay."
Why not?
Yeah,
Why not?
was good. Yeah, that was awesome. So with the in Canada, for some reason, I don't know why, I thought because they have free healthcare, right? Canada, or yes.
No, education wasn't free, but it isn't cost nearly as much as it does in the US. You can get a really good quality education for much less.
Is school also maybe the same? School, college, or university doesn't cost much as US for Canada also?
In Canada, of course, different universities, the fees are different depending on what it is.
Yeah.
But the philosophy in Canada is different from the US. In the US, there's much more of an emphasis on making money. Being a business person, an entrepreneur, and even, universities making money, attracting really good talent, and then, people spend a fortune getting an education. Canada tends to be a little bit different. It's really focused on the community, which is why the thinking is different. They say that when you look at a different culture, the cultures that are hardest to understand are the ones that are closest to your own. because you think you know, but you don't. So when I came to the U.S. from Canada, my husband and I thought that we actually understood the US because in Canada you get a lot of US television and magazines and all these things.
Yeah.
And the fact was we didn't understand because we didn't understand the basis on
Yeah.
which the country had founded. We understood the history, but not the real culture of individual freedom and what that actually meant. Because in Canada, it was very much community based.
Yeah.
So once we understood that, then understanding why people did things became much easier for us. In Canada, the assumption was always what's best for the community is what we're going to do. In the US, it was always what's best for the individual is what we're going to do. And so it's
Yeah,
very, very, very different
two different
culture.
worlds. With yeah. Okay, go. So let's talk about being corporate America escapee. So let's talk about the corporate America. Maybe we can kind of touch it. Like, what did you learn from being on the corporate America to the time when you're like an escapee? Um,
Uh, well,
with,
I spent many, many years in corporate America,
mhm,
traveling the world, doing global support development. I worked for a Fortune 100 company,
mhm,
and pretty much every week I was on an airplane going somewhere, doing something for the company.
mhm.
And the thing that I learned was that corporations can attract incredible amounts of talent. I mean, just brilliant people. The challenge that they have is that it's human nature to want to belong to a community.
Okay.
And when that community inside of a corporation is political, then you start having one camp fighting another camp, not based upon the fact that one set of ideas are better than another, but simply based on politics. And that is incredibly destructive.
Mhm.
In the end, I left my company, not because the company wasn't a good company, not because their products weren't good products. I left because I couldn't take the politics anymore.
Yeah.
Uh, it was so destructive, so vehement. It was like a blood sport. And it just wasn't me. I didn't want to be in that environment. I didn't want to come home every night and just, be so exhausted from surviving the day that I could barely talk to my family. So I left to start my own business. And I took all of the lessons on what not to do from corporate America into building my new business. And
Yeah.
that helped it a lot.
Yeah.
Um, we could actually build a culture in our business
Mhm.
that was inclusive, that was open. If people made a mistake, they knew they could say, hey, I screwed up. The only thing I wanted to know is how did we fix it and who's responsible for the process, make sure that they change the process. So we did everything that we could to learn from the mistakes that were being made in corporate America and to build a company that people really wanted to work in. And we had people retire with us. They spent that long in the company we built. We had people who used our company as a platform to showcase their talents so they could get just killer jobs elsewhere. So it was really heartwarming for me to know that we could build something that really was like a family, like a community,
Yeah.
and people could thrive there as opposed to coming to work every day thinking, I really don't want to be here.
Yeah. So is it possible, like when developing this company culture, when you have this company like a corporation, uh, would they maybe the CEO or the founder of that company still work for that company, or they're still the CEO and the founder of the company, or is it get like missed when the founder or the founder of that company is gone? Now you have like a replacement CEO that kind of like, so is it become like almost just either like you just like a number, you're not really what's the word I'm looking for, you're not more of a an asset, you're just more like a number. Is it like maybe what I'm trying to say, is it more, it feels more community because if the founder is still there, meaning they build this company. This is like their baby, so they want to treat their employees a certain way. And of course, the founder has to be also like a really good person. Probably is it like a different maybe? I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say. Like,
Yeah,
is it?
I think I do, Edward. The real challenge for any company, whether it's big or small, is succession. It's maintaining the culture through succession. And what tends to happen in corporations is because it's so big and you have a board of directors and you've got, CEOs and, all the rest of the, your CFO and all those guys.
Yes.
If they don't consciously work to maintain the culture and walk the talk, then everybody else below who's watching that group of people is going to start to deviate from the original culture. Right? They're going to mimic what they see above them. The thing about having a small business that my husband and I grew was that we were there every day and our employees saw us every day.
Yeah.
And we practiced that culture every day. So it wasn't like it was something that we wrote on a sign and put it on a wall and said, that's our culture, and then left.
Yeah.
Right. We walked the talk every day so that new people coming in, and I heard this once, somebody new came in and made a mistake and was afraid to tell us. And everybody else was saying, oh no, just go tell her, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Just say what you did to correct it.
Yeah.
So the culture then gets passed around because they see it being practiced from the top every day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that corporations are bad. In that the problem that they face is that when they choose, successors onto the board and for officers of the company, if they don't hammer in that people have to walk the talk, that they have to demonstrate this culture every single day, then it gets diluted, it gets changed, it becomes less valued, and everybody below comes to realize that, it doesn't matter what you say, you're not practicing what you preach, so why should I do it if you're not doing it?
Yeah. How do you deal with the management, high up management? Like, because I have seen, or I have like either just kind of read where the company has this culture which it was built, really good culture, and then they end up hiring some top management, and this person really, they don't end up matching with the culture and the entitlement. So from there, how do you really help with that? Either is it like a training for this person? Should this person who's a high up end up either kicked out of the company, or because then it's start kind of trickling down to the people, like the company culture kind of changing, or maybe you have seen company where they had a good company culture and then they high up, they start hiring some management, and then the whole company start kind of falling from their company culture. How do you deal with things like that? Like when you have someone to get hired in the management?
Yeah, that's a really difficult question to answer, because in a corporation, so much depends upon how reasonable your upper management is. Sometimes, people, if they don't have confidence in what they're doing, then they tend not to take criticism very well, and sometimes they can be vindictive. And so if you go to upper management and say, I thought the culture was this, but I see you doing this, are we changing? They may look at that as a criticism, and if they're vindictive, then they may say, well, this person really doesn't fit anymore, they need to go.
Yeah.
So it's really it's a difficult thing to do in a large corporation. And a better way might be to go to your human resources rep and sit down and say, this is what I'm seeing, can you help me understand what's going on? Because that person has a much better way of feeding back to upper management what's going on than you do. So they can kind of help you or help disseminate the message, if you like. so that it's a much safer route, and always not to attack the person or to say that they're wrong or to be angry, but to ask them to help you understand. Because if what the person is doing is so counter to what the culture is supposed to be, the HR person is going to realize that they can't actually explain it. And they're going to take it to upper management to say, how are we going to deal with this? And if it just happens to be a misunderstanding on your part, then you're not going to be taken down just because you didn't understand. They're going to help you to understand what's going on. Yeah. So going through your HR department is a much safer route.
So, but what happened in, I guess maybe also retaliation, right? So you go to HR, but then you end up finding that HR, maybe the HR manager or the head of HR is also a friend to the top of the management. Mm-hmm. And how do you, so it's like, because also there's that part, like maybe the HR person, instead of treating this as more professional, they end up talking to the person, maybe higher management, like, hey, one of the employee reported you because of this, and kind of like almost like, so now, how do you retaliate? How do you escape that kind of?
I think that at that point, it's time to change companies, because obviously the culture that you're in doesn't reflect your values. And one of the really sad things is that you really need to work in a company that reflects your values, because if it doesn't, then it's going to be incredibly stressful going to work every day. Yeah. So if a company starts out with your value set and you've got a really good match, and over time changes, then you've got some decisions to make. Do I want to stay in this company? Do I want to leave this company? I decided at one point when the company was merging, when the company I was working for was merging with another company, that was the time I really needed to leave. The values at that point had changed so much that I hated going to work every day, and that's no way to live your life. Yeah. And so I decided, this is it. They're going through a merger. They're going to want to get people to leave. And so, it's time for me to go, say goodbye and go. And it turned out to be a really great decision to make. Now, you may not have that opportunity. If you're in a situation where values changed, you really don't want to be with that company, then it's time to start looking for a company that shares your values. And if you think that, well, I don't really have a lot of time to do the research, then there's lots of companies out there that do headhunting, that do placement. And you can always go to them, explain exactly what it is that you're looking for, let them look for the company for you. And then you can go to the interviews and decide whether or not this is the new company is right for you.
Okay, that's actually kind of answer the question I was about to ask, because someone might be comfortable where they work, although they hate the company where they work, but they are comfortable in terms of like, hey, the job is like 3 minutes from my house. I've been here for years. I have some friends, although I'm not happy with the management, but at least I'm making decent money, and all the convenient stuff that works in there kind of favor, except the management. Maybe they just don't like the company culture and all that. I guess like the way you explain it, so the easy way is to get out of that comfort zone, to kind of start talking to recruiters and stuff, maybe kind of pushing your resume out there.
Right. I mean, it's like any other decision that you need to make. You need to decide what is most important to you. Mm-hmm. So if you live 3 minutes from the office and you have children that you need to be home for, then maybe it's worth staying there so that, in 3 minutes you can be home for your children, but you may want to find a job within the company that takes you out of the firing zone and just puts you into kind of a backup role where maybe there's not as much politics. Maybe it's not so unpleasant. Yeah. Years and years ago, I remember there was a fellow who had been the contracts manager, which was a fairly stressful position to be in. And he decided that as he got older, that he would take a job in shipping.
Yeah.
Because shipping was pretty apolitical,
Mhm.
right? You just get stuff in, you wrap it up, you ship it out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so for him, that was a way for him to stay in the company until he retired, to have a less stressful job, and still enjoy the benefits that he really liked about the company.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about the new normal now. this this hybrid work, where you work maybe 2 days in the office and 3 days at home.
Mhm.
Do you think, is this something that, I guess in a way I'm trying to figure, how do you keep up in trying to know these people are being professional and doing their job, or is this gonna be the normal, or we're gonna end up going back again to the office? Can I?
I think for a lot of people,
Mhm.
in the last couple of years, something has emerged that I think most people didn't expect.
Yeah.
And that was that for many people, working at home made them more productive rather than less productive. Now, there are always going to be managers who think that you're not working
Yeah.
when you're at home, right? That you're goofing off, that you're running errands, that you're doing your laundry instead of answering phones or whatever it is. And my comment to them is, I feel badly for you because you have such a poor view of human nature.
Mhm.
But many people found that they could be more productive because they didn't have the noise around them that they did in the office. They didn't have the people coming in to interrupt them constantly like they did in the office. And so they could actually get things done in half the time it took them to get it done in the office.
Mhm.
So now the issue really becomes, as an employer, do you use this to be able to better the quality of life of your employees, or do you use it to squeeze more work out of them? And
Hmm.
so here's what I'm saying. If it
Yeah.
used to take you 3 hours to get something done, and if
Yeah.
you work from home, you can get it done in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Do you say to the employee, that's great. You can go meditate for 10 minutes. You
Yeah.
can throw a load of laundry and you can do whatever because you're still producing at the same rate you were before. And so you get paid the same amount. Or
Yeah.
do you say, well, look, you only worked an hour and a half, so you owe me another hour and a half of work so I can get more work out of you?
Mhm.
And this is a decision that the employer has to make.
Mhm.
We're in America, we're crazy. We work constantly, and somehow we wear that suffering like a badge of honor,
Yeah.
as opposed to Europe, for example, where people, they basically work to live, not live to work,
Mhm.
and they don't work the crazy hours we do. They enjoy life a lot more. I think that that's a lesson we really have to learn.
Yeah.
We're it's For me, it's like we're in our 20s, still trying to find our feet and prove ourselves. And we think that by working 60, 70 hours a week, we're going to prove that we're so much better.
Yeah.
Whereas people in countries that, have been going for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years have learned a long time ago that life is worth living. That yes, you want to have valuable work, but you also want to spend time with your family. You also want to spend time with your friends. You also want to spend time outdoors doing things, that it's not constantly work, work, work.
Yeah.
And I think that we as Americans still have to learn that lesson. We still think that overworking, um, is something to be proud of, as opposed to the fact that, okay, so now what's it cost you? It's cost you all your friends, it's cost you your family, you have no hobbies, you never have time to go on vacation, so you have no life lessons, you've never learned about other cultures. I mean, all of these things that you've given up so that you can work for 70 hours a week for what?
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think that we're going through a whole reevaluation at this point as to what's really important to us.
Mhm.
And so my take is, if you are an employee and you are producing the same as you were producing before, but you can get things done faster and probably more accurately working at home for 2 weeks or for 2 days a week, great, go for it.
Yeah.
That makes a whole lot of sense. I think the only reason now why people come into the office, apart from the fact, is that managers feel more in control if they can have meetings.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
it's because there's a social aspect to work as well, and I think
Yeah.
people kind of miss that. Um, you know, bagel day at the office, or having coffee with people and discussing things.
Yeah.
Zoom is a great invention. Don't get me wrong, Zoom is great,
Yeah. Yeah.
but there's also value to sitting in a room, of 4 or 5 people together saying, okay, let's brainstorm something,
Yeah.
where you can pick up much more of the conversation because you get that energy that you're picking up at the same time as you're picking up people's voice and their facial expressions.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, yeah, that's really good. I guess it's more. So I guess management or manager should learn uh, a new way not to micromanage people because like you're saying, if someone can do, if they said they have a work that they finish at 8 hours but they can do in 6 hours, that should be good, as long they finish their project that was given for them to just be
Right.
like, yeah.
And so you always want to look at the quality of the work that's being produced.
Yes.
Right. So if somebody says, I got this done
Yeah.
working from home, and you look at it and it's really, really bad,
Yeah.
then you need to go back and say, okay, your work is suffering. Let's talk about why that is. Is it because you have, 3 children at home with no caretaker while you're trying to work? And so this isn't really working out. You need to come to the office, or, what's the cause? So instead of kind of jumping to the conclusion, oh, this isn't working,
Yeah.
look at, what's the reason why this happened, and then kind of take it from there and figure out what the solution is. So absolutely, you want to inspect the work the same as you would if somebody was in the office. But if the quality of the work is at the same level as when they were working in the office, and they're getting it done on time, and they happen to save themselves a couple of hours, maybe you could give them a perk. There are lots of online training programs like Mind Valley, and you could give them a membership in Mind Valley to say, hey, if you get your work done faster and you'd like to learn something online, then here's a membership to Mind Valley. Spend a couple of hours expanding your ideas about these topics. So there's lots of things that you can do that will help the person grow and develop, as a perk for having done their work a little bit faster.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that they're not productive. They're absolutely productive. They did exactly what you wanted them to do. They got it done on time. They got it done to the quality that you asked for.
Mhm.
And
So,
here's some way that you can help them to grow. Now,
yeah.
if they're answering the telephone, right?
Yeah.
So if they're set up at home to answer the telephone, and this happened a lot, right? In the last couple of years, somebody says, oh, gee, I'm not in the office. I'm actually working from home. I don't have access to this. Then obviously, we've got some IT challenges that still need to be worked out, so people have safe access to certain things to be able to do their job. And if they're supposed to be customer support from 8 to 5, then yeah, they're not going to do their job faster because they're answering the phone for people and they have to be there 8 to 5. But they can be in a nice environment. Maybe at home when they're answering the phone, they can get up and get a cup of coffee, and the kitchen is like 10 steps away.
Mhm.
And they're sitting by a window, and they can look out at the street, and it's they can see a park or something, but the environment is much more pleasant, which helps to reduce the stress of being in that kind of job.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe it's not an hours thing, maybe it's an environment thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's switch gears and let's talk about helping small businesses, and founders. And I know you do this. You help small business like to things like either kind of make generate $10,000 to $50,000 just in 45 minutes, like with your training earlier.
Right.
How maybe let's jump in there to kind of go into talking about getting them unstuck to accelerate to the growth and stuff like that. Uh, what
um,
maybe
I'm sorry, can you?
Oh no, no, I was talking about like where you talk about getting them unstuck. to accelerate
Right.
their
Uh-huh.
growth, their business growth.
Right.
So maybe you can
Right.
tell us a little bit about like how does this work, or what's your program
Okay.
like when you're helping business or small business owner or founder to make 10 to 50,000 just
Okay. Great question.
Mhm.
A lot of times, people will start a business because they know how to do something.
Yeah.
And the first little while, they can be successful because they have some contacts, they know people who
Yeah.
need their service, and so they can get uh, their first little bit of the company off the ground. And maybe they get to six figures or close to six figures. Okay. So, and they do that just, because they have something that people need and they're able to, they've got a small group of people that they can sell this to. But a lot of times they'll get to a point where they kind of stall after they've gone through their warm contacts. They've run their first set of ads. So the people who are going to jump on this have already done that, and
Yeah.
they're kind of wondering where to go. At that point, I like to sit them down and do a profit assessment. So we go through a number of different areas, and I ask them, if we did this, if we tweaked this, if we did that, what do you think the impact on the company would be? Would it be like 1% increase, 2% increase? And we keep the numbers really, really small, because here's the thing about business. When you tweak two or three different areas, the effects compound one on the other. You probably remember Einstein said a long time ago that compound interest was the eighth wonder of the world. He thought this was just fantastic. Well, making changes, small changes in key areas, will play off each other so that the overall increase is much bigger than the sum of your parts, if you like. And so what we do is we go through a number of areas and we just look at, where are you, and what if we just tweak this? What if we tweak that?
Yeah.
We did this. What if we did that? And then we look at what the increase in their revenue would be and what the increase in their profit would be, right? There's a wonderful saying that revenue feeds the ego and profit feeds your family. So we always want to look at profit as much as we look at revenue.
Yeah.
So we take a look at what the impact is. And then I can say to the person at that point, do you believe in these numbers? Because they gave me the percentages, the 1%, the 3%, the 5%, whatever it was that we put into the platform. And then it ran through all the calculations and said, this is what the outcome would be. And 100% of the time they'll say, absolutely, I gave you those numbers. I believe in those numbers. So then we say, okay, now let's see how we can get that program running for you.
Yeah.
So it's really a matter of figuring out where we can get more revenue and more profit in the company, not by spending more money on advertising, but by using your current budget better, by doing some things that perhaps you hadn't thought about before, by looking at things a different way. So let me give you an example. A lot of people are told when they have a business that they need to have an elevator speech, right? I'm a great supporter of the Chamber of Commerce. I happen to live in Las Vegas, and so I'm part of the Las Vegas Chamber of Commerce. And so when I go to the events, people always say, so tell me what you do, right? And you're supposed to have this elevator speech.
Yeah.
Well, there's a difference between an elevator speech, which says, this is what I do, versus a market dominating position, which says, this is the benefit I bring to you. And this benefit addresses your biggest fear, right? So let's say that I'm a realtor. Okay, let's pretend I'm a realtor.
Yep.
And I go to this Chamber of Commerce meeting and somebody says, so what do you do? I have a choice. I can say, hey, I'm a realtor and I specialize in selling, residential homes in this area, right?
Yep.
Or I can say, I'm a realtor. I'll sell your house in 28 days or less, or I'll sell it for free.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I like that.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
Because in that one small statement, I've addressed your greatest fear, which is I can't sell your house in a timely manner, and I'm going to end up with 2 mortgages.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I've just addressed that fear. So do you want, if you're thinking of selling your house, do you want to talk to me? You bet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Whereas everybody else is just saying, I'm a realtor and this is what I specialize in, right? So we talk about things like that. And I say to people, if we crafted one of those, if I could show you how you craft one of those statements so that you get people's attention immediately, and everyone in your company said that, from the person who answers the telephone all the way down to the person who ships the package, if everybody knew that market dominating position and said that little speech, every time they answered the phone, every time they shipped something, whatever, what percentage increase do you think you would get? Now, studies have shown that you can increase your revenue by 50% and more just by that one thing. But I won't let them go over 10%, because then they might think the numbers are unrealistic.
Yeah.
So I'll say to them, do you think it would increase at 2% or maybe 5%? And people say, oh yeah, 20, 25%. And I'll say, no, let's keep it. If you think that it would have a dramatic effect, let's cut it off at 10%. That's as high as we're going to go, right? Now we might look at something like, they say, I need to get cash fast. Okay, 2 ways to get cash fast. First thing is you look at cutting costs. So what are you paying for that you don't need, right? So if you went through all of your direct costs and all of your indirect costs, maybe renegotiated some of your contracts, perhaps got rid of stuff that you don't really need. You kind of bought it, you played with it, but you don't really use it, but you've got a monthly fee attached. If you really went and went through all of your cost cutting, what do you think would be the impact? And it might be, 1%, 2%. Great. Let's put in 1%. And then we'll look at things like, what if we increased your price? Now, to be perfectly honest, when was the last time that most entrepreneurs increased their price? Almost never, right? Because, well, if I increase my price, then I'm going to lose clients. Well, there's a formula that I can run you through that says, if you increase your price this much and you do it the right way, there's a right way and a wrong way to do this, but if you do it the right way, then you can afford to lose this many clients and still have the same net profit.
Yeah.
Right? So don't be afraid to increase your price, but there's a way to do it. And and if you do it that way, then we go back and say, okay, what would the impact be? You're probably not going to lose all of those clients. How many do you think you're going to lose? And so we keep kind of going through that whole process and come up at the end with, this is what this will look like. Are you ready to move forward?
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess one of the other thing, I know whenever you're talking like to small business or like founder, the funding is always a problem. Like money is always a problem. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like, what is the key to like a successful marketing? Like, so, because the problem is always funding.
Right. The thing is not to get caught up in thinking that all marketing is paid for. Okay. There's lots of things that you can do in marketing that require your time and consistency, but not necessarily your dollars. Okay. So depending upon what product you have, there are lots of people looking for high quality guests for podcasts. You know that because you have a podcast, right? So you're always looking for good people. So a podcast is advertising, right? So you want to take that podcast and you want to send it out to all the people you know, as well as having the person who is interviewing you send it out to their list. So you want to make sure that you are ready to be a great guest on somebody's podcast, that you know your stuff and that you're amenable, flexible to the agenda that they have. Another thing that you can do is, you're probably already paying to get clients into your website, your landing page, whatever it is that you have. Well, if you're already paying for that, then look at some things that make sense. Like, if they're buying something, do you help them upsell? Do you offer them, do you want fries with that? Right? The studies have shown that about 34% of people will take an offer if it's presented at the time that they're buying something.
Yeah.
So don't let them get away without that upsell. And if they abandon the cart, they don't want it, do you have a downsell? Do you at least capture their information so that you can drip on them while they're on that buyer's journey? And do you even understand what the buyer's journey is? Right? There are lots of things that you can do that will help to increase your revenue that don't mean that you have to spend a lot more money on advertising and marketing, right? So bundling, do you have products that bundle things together that are a higher price point,
Yeah.
right? But don't cost you a substantial amount to increase that bundle? Do you have joint ventures with people? I'll refer people to you. You can refer people to me. Or are you part of a chain where you can refer people up the chain and people can, and you can refer the people down the chain can refer people to you, or, whatever. Do you, have you inserted yourself into one of those chains? Have you taken the time to get to know other people that you can provide benefit to, so that when they come across somebody who needs something, they think, oh, I know somebody that I can send you to.
Yeah.
One of the things that really surprises me is people think if you do the same thing as I do, that somehow we can't help each other. And so I'm a business coach. I love getting to know other business coaches because no two of us ever do the same thing.
Yeah.
And I needed something for a client the other day. And who did I go to? One of my buddies who's also a business coach. And I said, do you know anybody who does this? And she said, absolutely. I've got a great referral for you. And so we circled around. She did a mutual introduction. I interviewed that person, found out they'd be perfect for my client, and then put them together with my client. So just because somebody does the same thing as you do, don't write them off as being a potential referral partner or somehow you can benefit each other. There are tons of things that you can do without spending more money or a lot more money. Does that make sense?
Great. Thank you so much. And I was thinking too, the way you're saying, do not be scared to ask someone who does the same thing that you do. Or so I guess it's one of those things you'll be thinking, hey, it's a competition or whatever. You start putting this stuff in your head without really listening to what they're gonna say. Like you're like, hey, like if I want to ask, I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna ask Wendy something. But before I ask you, I start, maybe she's gonna say like this. Maybe she's gonna. So I start blocking myself. You see what I'm saying? I guess.
Absolutely. The thing is that there are 7 billion people on the planet.
Yeah.
There aren't enough coaches in the entire globe to service everybody who needs a coach.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to go up to people and find out what they do and how they do it and how they're different from you. I was at a Chamber of Commerce meeting last night, and somebody that I know actually introduced me to a fellow who's also a business consultant. And we had a great conversation because once he understood what I do and how I do it, he said, my goodness, we should get in a room together because we could do talks together because we don't do the same things. We actually complement each other. So don't ever be afraid to go in and really find out what somebody does, because you may be surprised they're the ideal person to work with.
Yep. Perfect. So in your business coaching, do you focus either like maybe in product-based business or service-based business? Does it matter? Is there like a difference?
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me which type of business you have, because there are some fundamental things that everybody needs to know. And typically these are the things that people forget about and jump over when they start their new business because they're so excited to get what they know out to the world. So in building that foundation to allow you to scale, it really applies to everybody, not necessarily the same way. So if you're a brick and mortar store, or let's say you have a daycare, and somebody else has an ad agency, then some of the things are going to be applied differently. So the daycare may send out postcards to an area within a 5-mile radius of where they're located, as an example, whereas somebody who has an ad agency may do Facebook ads for everybody around the world. It's just a different application, but the same concepts will apply. We're still going to talk about market dominating positions. We're still going to talk about drip campaigns. We're still going to talk about upsells and downsells and cross sells. And we're going to talk about all of those things. You're just going to apply them differently.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much again, Wendy Byford. Maybe before we go, well, if like maybe a last word for small business owner or founder,
Mhm.
like a last, what would you just anything that you would like to leave before we go? Like if you can say like a last, maybe something to leave for them to. Um,
Well, let me say something that they probably haven't heard from somebody else.
yes.
Because everybody's going to give them the advice of, don't give up, keep going, all that stuff. And don't get me wrong, mindset is 80% of the game, which is why I also concentrate on mindset with people I coach. But the advice that I would give you is when you're starting your business, figure out what your end game is. What is it that you want to do with this business once you've grown it? And to what level do you want to grow it? Right? If you are growing a business because you want to be your own boss and determine your own calendar to be there for your children, then be careful about saying that you want to grow an 8-figure business because you won't have time to spend with your children. So make sure that you know how big you want to grow your company so that the lifestyle you want is taken into account, and know what your end game is going to be so you don't end up thinking that you can sell your business to fund your retirement, but you didn't set up the business correctly, so now you can't sell it. So those two things are really important to decide up
Yeah.
front.
Yeah. Thank you so much again, Wendy Byford. I really appreciate for taking this time to kind of share all these knowledges. And thank you, I guess. Yeah. Just give me a second. And yep. And we're just gonna end here.